talking to Joe Hewitt. He's the guy who developed the iPhone application for Facebook. I guess most of us use it very often. Hey, Joe,
Hey,
how is it going?
it's going great.
So, how did the new 3.0 release go?
Went well. We did a couple bug fix updates, and I think things are getting stable now, and people are using the app.
So, one of the key things about this new application is like I saw you're using a grid style user interface and you're trying to cram in a lot more information into the application. And I'm trying to figure out if there is a larger trend there for all applications going forward.
Well, I think Facebook's kind of a unique case in that we have a pretty large website. There's a lot of different things, so it's challenging to squeeze all that into one app. I'd almost considered making multiple apps for each individual feature, like inbox and chat. So it's hard. I wouldn't recommend that every iPhone developer take that same approach of using a grid and a configurable home screen.
But in terms of information, right, like the key story there is when I look at that application, it kind of correlates with what's going on the web, which is we are having too much information. I call it the problem of plenty. There's too many photographs, news streams, tweets, Facebook updates, yada, yada, yada. This is a very different kind of an environment as far as, information architecture is concerned. So how should we be thinking about it? Like, how are you thinking about your application, and how should other people be thinking about it?
There's kind of a conflict between the stream of stuff that comes from all your friends, which is a mix of things that you're very interested in and things that you're semi-interested in. So you want to give people a nice, easy way to kind of graze through that. But at the same time, there's some things that people that they're close friends with, or their family or their immediate relatives that are close friends, they really insist on like seeing all of it. They want to be able to not miss a thing. So it's very hard, I think, sometimes, and we have at Facebook different approaches we've taken to try to surface the best stuff, the most interesting stuff.
But what's your advice to other people who are developing applications for that matter?
Oh, well, it depends on the platform. I mean, it's interesting that Facebook and all the social networks and Twitter have I think, really refined this model where all the stuff that you do gets kind of thrown into one place, and people graze through it, which is very different from the old world in which everyone would have these separate sites. You'd have a photo site, you'd have a blogging site, and now it all works together better. So I think that there's something to be said for taking that approach and not specializing too much in one particular media.
But don't you think that we need to provide more context to all this information, which is very atomized and there's very free-flowing in many ways? How do we provide that context? Like, is it social graph? Is it location? Is it a bit of both? How are you thinking about those things?
I think we're learning. I mean, this is all very new, so we're definitely learning. One thing that I find a bit problematic is that right now there's really not a lot to distinguish the things that people have quickly thrown out there, like quick photo that they've uploaded or a quick status update, from the stuff that people have really put a lot of time into. People have crafted these blog posts that are that have some really interesting stuff, and it just kind of gets dumped out there into the stream with everything else. Whereas before Facebook and Twitter, there was the blogging world where every post was potentially long and people would really sit down and read it.
So that's a problem and a challenge which is for facing everybody. I think the big issue we've seen, or at least I feel, is that for the last 5 to 6 years we focused too much on giving people ability to create content, but we haven't really built intelligent consumption systems.
Yeah, I agree.
So, how do you see that evolving? Like, I see, I think from that perspective, Facebook Mobile, the iPhone app, is a very smart way of consuming information. How do you see that, going forward?
I think the problem is probably going to be solved more on the publishing side than the consumption side. Because I think, like I was just saying, right now when people go on Facebook, they just casually throw something out there. What's on your mind? Take a picture. You don't add any context to it, and we don't really give you tools or anything to do that. Whereas some of these more specialized sites that may use Facebook Connect might add some context, but I'm not sure. I think we have a ways to go in helping to surface that context.
Right. Let's talk about another area which should be right up your alley, the hybrid apps, right? Like, so no one can just create an app create an application which is just web based or just a mobile app. Like, now everything is cross platform, cross browser. So what are some of the key things you pay attention to when developing, right? Like, and like, how should programmers and creators think about the apps going forward?
I like that what the hybrid thing has done to the model I think that people use when they think about their stuff. The user interface, if you have just one user interface, like one app or one website that you go to, then you start to think about the UI as being the product. Whereas when you access it from all these different devices, you think more in terms of the content that you've created. So when you're developing these sites, you have to start out with like an object model, a content model that's generic, and having like a data API is kind of essential now. Whereas before you would just kind of hack your UI and your data together.
So what you essentially are saying that you can't really, you have to start planning for both platforms on day one, and with a view of like how others might work with your application as well.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, not even if you don't have any external people, even if you don't open up your API, just for you alone, you're probably going to have to develop. You're going to have a website. You're probably going to have some kind of mobile experience, and you might wind up having to go on all sorts of different devices and hardware.
Right. What is your view on the applications which are coming out right now? Do you feel that they are close to your idea of the new kind of application, or you feel still a lot of people are doing either mobile apps or desktop apps? I mean, so browser apps.
I'm very pleased at how many people have done iPhone apps. I mean, it's almost rare nowadays to have a website that I use that doesn't have at least a decent iPhone app. I think we're all still kind of figuring out how to do that right. A lot of the apps that I use frequently, I think, are a little experimental and need a lot of work.
Right. Last question for you. I know you have to rush, but where do you see the App Store headed in like a year from now? Given that we are already at 65,000 applications and growing, I mean, how does one discover applications on there now?
Well, I hope that there are some better discovery means coming. If not from Apple, then from someone else. I get the feeling that Apple is not going to do anything particularly innovative because they've kind of used the iTunes music buying model for the apps, and they're pretty comfortable with that. And I don't know, I wouldn't predict that they're going to do much more to help people discover apps, but I hope that there can be some third-party infrastructure around that.